recording, and we'll do some screen sharing. Can I do it this way? All right, so when you boot up Substance Painter, this is what you'll see. Obviously, it has its own little splash screen. We don't need that. And right away, it's going to accept OBJ or FBX file types that will display right away. So if I go to New, I can ignore all this other stuff. I just need to look for this little file and choose Select. Now that'll take me to an option where I can pick different objects that Substance Painter can understand. Right, so these file types, FBX and OBJ, typically the ones that we're going to be using between Maya and Unity. So here I have two FBXs from Mixamo characters that I downloaded. Let me pop one of these in here just to take a look at it. It is missing the head for some reason. Not sure what happened there. But the head does take up space over here. And I believe or maybe the arms and legs might also be missing. It might be on a different layer. So this is the interface for Substance Painter. I'm going to have to squish stuff over. I'm not going to put you zoom. Most of your work to start with is going to be done over here in the layers, right? So layers is up at the top, but it works just like Photoshop layers, right? Things that are on top of each other will display first. And then at the bottom here, you have all of your materials and brushes. So the two main ones that we're going to look at are materials and smart materials. The difference is a material is literally just a repeating texture. It'll have some properties in there that maybe sometimes it's layered, right, with certain things. However, a smart material is more complicated. You can get things that will change which layers on the material are showing based on the curves on that object. So we'll look at how to implement that on a character. Say like if I've got like a curvy object like my after this controller here, right, where there's a lot of like angular changes. What Substance can do, right, is it can use an occlusion map to detect when there are little pinches or when something changes angle. And then it can apply specific texture elements to those areas. So for instance, if I wanted to make this into a metal texture, I might want to have like rust elements on the edges, right? And usually if you look at rusty objects, you know, they'll start to rust away at the most exposed and thinnest edges. So you can just use a slider to just increase the amount of rust, and it will literally just add rust to certain areas. So let's look at what we can do with that with a smart material, and then we'll also look at what we can do with a base material. Now, this character is a little more complex than we need, but let's go ahead and just show you how to get started, right? So let's say I start out with a character. Notice that it is on an unwrapped character. The better your unwrap, the better your texture is going to look at the end of the day. But you can sometimes get away with just using an automatic unwrap and bringing that into Substance Painter. It will hurt my poor heart if you do this, but you know, I know that people hate UV unwrapping in many circles. So to get started, what we might do is pick one of these textures down here. Let's say we want to give our character some jeans. We're going to drag the material up here into our layers, and that is going to apply that material across everything on the character, which we probably don't want, right? So next step is to right click on that layer and choose Add Black Mask. So if you remember from Photoshop, right, whenever you have black areas on a mask, right, it works like alpha channel. It is not displaying anything that is black, but it will display anything that is white. So to get to our brush, we can right click anywhere here And by default, right, you can also see the color of your brush. So if I'm using a white brush now, and say I want to give her jeans, right? If I paint over this area with a white brush, it is now revealing that texture right underneath the mask there. And I can also paint in 3D, right? I can swap back and forth. No issues there. Now, sometimes painting, right, as you can see, becomes a little bit inaccurate. You know, you'll have breaks where sometimes things will go over the edges. Quick way to fix that is just to paint in black. So I can change the color of my brush down here and paint out areas where maybe I don't want the jeans texture to be showing. And instead, sometimes it's easier to just use this nice little tool here, the polygon fill tool. So with this one, if I select the polygon, it will literally fill it with, in my case, with a white texture, right, which is revealing the mask, which shows the jeans underneath. You can do this individually by polys. You can do it with the whole mesh, or I find one of my favorite ones is the UV chunk fill. So, you know, in Maya, when you have a UV unwrapped object, right, we will have these UV shells, which are different chunks, as Substance calls them. And so if I have the leg chunk here, or the leg UV shell, and I click on this with the polygon fill and with UV chunk fill, voila, this whole area will fill with that material. Yeah. And I can also go into this material, right, and change things like the scale. I want to mess with you know, how detailed things are, getting up close. I can also dive in a little bit deeper into some of these texture properties here, where I can change like how much sort of wear and tear there is across the object, or how to kind of distribute different parts of the wear and tear across the object, right? So these are all kind of almost like components, right, in Unity, where you have like different areas that are going to affect what or how these textures kind of come together. And it's nice because it just gives you it in sliders. Now, here's a cool one, right? Like the seam for the jeans, right? Like usually your clothing seam will be at the edge here. And this is kind of an area where Substance can get really cool, because it can sometimes like actually detect where things should go. And you'll get like some really nice results with relatively little effort, right? So obviously the wear and tear here might be a bit strong for me. I can also randomize, or I could see if I turn them down. Somewhere in here, I can I can turn down the wear and tear if I'm not happy with that, right? But let's not get too far into that. So say that I've got one piece of the texture looking how I want it to look. Sorry, I don't have chat displaying this. Is anything happening in chat? So list of materials updated by Substance Painter. Possible to create and add our own materials. You can create and add your own materials. The best thing about it is that they have their own website where you can download them. So I did post this inside a 3D level design, and kind of bumped a little bit, share.substancepainter.3D, where you can download new materials, right? You can just browse here, or you can search. So all sorts of cool like ground materials, right, for games, um, as well as like clothing materials, right, or armor materials, chainmail. All this stuff is really straightforward. I believe you do need to log in with an Adobe account, right? Adobe now owns Substance, but you may also need to register specifically on this site. I'm not 100% sure. So when you download a new material, let's just take a look at that really quick. Say I want to get this chainmail onto my character, right? First off, what I can do is just open up the folder where all of my materials lie. So I'm going to right click on any of these materials and do show and explore. So here are the material files that I have added to my shelf. This part here is called a shelf. And notice that these are different material types. We have SBAR and SBS. I forget which ones are which, but one SBAR must be the smart materials. So with a new one downloaded, let's see what we got. SBS and SBAR. Okay, interesting. Maybe I want to create a new folder here. Sure, we super need a new folder, but since there is a resources folder in there, okay, it already refreshed. Here's my chainmail. So I can drag that into my layers. It applies to everything by default. So I'm going to add a black mask. And then I'm going to go to my polygon fill, choose the UV chunk that I want to fill that with. Click on that. And it will display in a kind of weird way. So let's go back to the texture settings and play with the scale here. And not bad. It's a little bit dark, right? But it is on there. So another thing that you can do, is it middle? It's been a few months since I used this. Oh, there it is. So shift and right click will change the lighting on your character, and notice that it is also changing it live there on my texture. Right, so you get some cool lighting effects just back and forth. And really, you can go through and just pick and choose materials, right, and keep adding them to your layer stack here. Mask them out with a black mask. Use your polygon fill or your chunk fill, and click on objects directly in the viewport here or in the on this side in the UVs, right? I got some leather. I don't know if she really needs a leather hood. Maybe that was going over the top here. Maybe we'll change the hood back. Go back to our material, get the scale looking right for the objects that is on, and then move on to the next bit of sort of next material that we want, right? So again, black mask, polygon fill, add it to some objects here, change the scale. And we just slowly like move across the character to add materials, right? Now, I am curious on why this model has the skin element as a separate object in the UVs. To get over that, I would probably open her up inside of Maya, right, and then re-export the FBX. Yeah, no, you guys can take off. You don't need to stick around, but yeah, this will be up online as usual on YouTube. So let's take a look at the character I made last semester for organic modeling. Let's see if he's still around. No, that one autosave. Don't have any. Maybe it's in my folder somewhere. I must have moved it out when I backed up all my files. So next we can just look at my very simple character that we made inside of Maya the other day. So let me check my folder here. Just so that we can look at how to export those textures from here into Unity. So okay, so we have this little guy. This was my demo scene from this morning. Let's take a look at where he is living on my hard drive. Copy. And okay, so this one, very simple character. All right, here's my UV chunks. When you first bring in a character, say when you're bringing a custom character, the first thing that you want to do before you start texturing, especially it's mainly for if you're going to be using smart materials, is to go into this top setting here, texture set settings, and you want to click on bake mesh maps. What's that's going to do is it's going to figure out all of the default kind of normal maps and ambient occlusion. So if I say bake mesh maps, let's see what it gives me. So it will show us things like curvature, normals, thickness, world space. The main one that we use is the ambient occlusion map for smart materials. Now what that's going to do is when I go to my smart materials shelf, this is where it will be smart enough to figure out where the curves are on my model, right? And actually like make changes to the texture based on those curves. Now, I thought I had a genes in here as well. That would be a good one to use. Maybe we can just use a camo. Oh, there's denim. This is a fun one to test out. All right. So applied our character. Now, what's interesting to note on the smart material is that where I have cuts on my UVs, say, oh, painful there. Let's do another mask. I'll just make it a white mask to start with, and we'll go backwards. So wherever I have cuts in my UV, right, along the arms here, I have a seam between the chest and the arm down here. Smart Materials has added a seam on the denim, right? I also have a seam down here, the side of my character. And this smart material is what makes it smart, right? Will detect that seam and will paint in a texture variation, in this case, the sewing, right, of these edges along that seam, which is big for artists, right? Because there's a lot of work to do otherwise if we do all that stuff manually. Let's look at adding in some more stuff. Let's say if we put a layer underneath, right? What we'd have to do is hide things on top by grabbing a black brush and then using the fill. Maybe we want to make a flannel character. We're making a Little Big World 2 or something. Right. So smart materials can be really fun because they will pick up a lot of things that already exist in your model, right, that you would probably want, and will just apply texture to it with very little effort, right? So same goes for things like skin. Let's say we get some skin on this character. Sorry, he's going to be a mannequin for a second. And then we can use our fill UV chunk. Now, maybe this is not such a great example because my head is so plain and square. Here you can also see I've got some stretching going on my UVs. But it will do some cool stuff as far as figuring out where like certain curves are on your character. I mean, the skin will also add like random like moles and like veins showing. So really powerful tool. Yeah, skin texture is a bit of a scary one. But really you're just working with masking, right? And switching between black and white. I mean, you could go into more depth there, right? You could go into having things blend into one another. But this will get you 90% of the way there without knowing anything about painting, without knowing like a whole lot of Photoshop, right? Just by filling in different areas with different colors. It's a really exciting tool. I think this is one of my favorite things just to poke around in, right? You don't need to be so worried about your technical skills or your artistry skills, right? It's a lot of just sliders and testing things out, right? It's quite stable as well. The main thing to play with is usually, especially with smart materials, right, is diving into these sliders in the material properties, right, that can drastically change the appearance of your object, and sometimes not at all, because maybe you're not quite on the right property yet, right? So in my case, looks like I haven't played with this particular texture yet. Probably need to look for where the scale is and stuff individually. Oh, leather pattern. No, scale. There it goes. All right, so once you get a little bit deeper into the smart material properties, you have to play around a little bit more, right, to figure out where things are actually being applied. But to get something going, right, it's relatively straightforward and pretty fun to use. So let's say I'm happy with my character here. Let's just give him some hands so that they'll look okay. Oh, we can also go and get like maybe some hair. And so I can use fur. Make him into Chewbacca real quick. And okay, so I add my black mask. Switch. Oops. He cycles through my materials. back. Oh no, have I just hit a button that I don't know how to revert? Oh no. Painting, rendering. Okay, do not hit B. Display material. Okay, that's what I wanted. Black mask. Brush is not B. Mental note. Oh, and you can rotate this stuff. So obviously, if you have a Wacom tablet, right? Like this is going to be even more fun to experiment with. So I'm going to make my brush light. Get this guy a little lockdown haircut. We're getting there. So again, just being able to paint in 3D is like a huge step up from Maya and Photoshop, right? Like having to deal with 2D painting in a 3D world was never fun. Other stuff I have in here like human eye. Oh, you can even paint like an entire face directly onto material. So let me check the chat real quick. Scars and other blemishes. You could grab like a material that is specifically like a scar material, right? And you could paint just like streaks in there. Say if you wanted a streak down there, right? You could grab like a reddish skin and then, or you could even just take the existing skin, right? And alter, make a new layer of skin, alter the color possibly. Let's see if that would work. Oh, so then you can get some really creepy effects. So if I wanted to alter this one, maybe I can change the color. Oh, it's my Zoom stuff still hiding things from me. Change the color slightly to like a darker, more reddish color. Let's see. And then I could paint, you know, using my, oh, whoops, I've selected a brush instead of a material. Go back to brush. So I actually have a face brush on my mask right now. This is what we're looking at. So scaling my brush. Okay, so control and right click to scale a brush. You can just paste a face directly on there, but it's not quite happy with me. Back to little parameter. Where did you go? Color. And skin, border one, eyeball. Oh, bummer. All right, well, that might be just for getting into a little bit more detail. You see, making material render in less of a quality setting if you're going for PS1 aesthetic. So if you are going for, you know, low poly, flat colors more, I haven't tried that out myself. You might get lucky and find some sort of materials inside of the share site that could give you that look, but it would, you know, require a little bit of experimentation on your part. You might even be able to get away with like making your own materials using stuff that you download from the web. But there could be some cartoon shaders in here. Let's see if we can cartoon materials. Okay, so there's some stuff that is more stylized, right? Some people have uploaded stylized textures. The nice thing about that is, you know, when you combine stylized with like normal maps and other advanced texture maps, you can get a really, really good look. So probably worth looking around for stylized textures first, right? And then trying to combine them maybe with one of these, or to try and see if you can find a tutorial to make your own textures. I'm sure that'll work. Alrighty, so let's say I'm happy with my character. If I'm only going to see them from, maybe it's a farming game, and I'm going to keep my camera angle way high up, so I don't necessarily need um, to see the character's face at this point, right? Or I just decided, hey, my style is no face characters. And I can't get over how cool this smart shader is on the scenes. That stuff is just it's so nice to see art and code coming together. So pretty. So when I'm done, I got to export textures, file export textures, and it'll show me what has come in with Maya. If I brought it in from Maya, I think it's defaulted to this blend that I had used to initially assign to that character. What I want to do is look at the top here and go to the configuration tab. And if you look down here, it'll give us options for Unity. So I believe the default Unity games, let's go back to the game, under my material here, default 3D project in Unity, right? Albedo, which is our color map, metallic, which is our specular map, normal map, height map, which is a stronger kind of normal map, a little more tech behind it too. Occlusion, that is any sort of areas where light has trouble reaching, right? Say like inside your nostril or under your armpit, right? It's going to just shadow those areas. And detail mask, that one is a little more complicated, but we won't worry about it necessarily. Um, if I have an HDRP project, say like this one, let's take a look at the material in here. So, how much I can do material. So in an HDRP project, if I check on the shaders and use one of these HDRP shaders, right, it's slightly different, but mostly the same stuff. A base map, which is our color map, metallic setting, smoothness setting, or there is roughness or smoothness. I believe they're just inverts of each other. And a mask map to control that smoothness or roughness. Normal map, same as before, and detail map, emission, etc. So if I was going to, or depending on what my Unity project is set to, right, that's what I would want to choose down here. And you can also export to various other engines, right, or various other renderers, including Maya, right? You can push materials back into Maya by exporting the textures that will then need to be hooked up into a Maya Hypershape material ball, right? If you want to export to CryEngine, Dota 2, right? They have some support for Amazon's game engine. So just be aware that this configuration tab is important because it is going to basically, right, these materials are, as you can see in like smart materials, especially many layers oftentimes, right? Like it's not just a single texture. There's lots of different layers on top of each other, and there are calculations going on based on the curvature of the object, which layers to display, and so on, plus randomness and other algorithms, right, determining how those are mixed up. What our export textures do is basically in Photoshop, flattening the layers, exporting it out as a texture that game engine will understand. So for my guy, I believe this project is actually a lightweight render project, which is not supported. But I will use a standard shader, which has a color map, metallic, normal, and occlusion. So I'll just use standard material or metallic smoothness. And here, these little color boxes will tell you what specifically is going to be exported, right? So if we look at the HD render pipeline as an example, you can see that compared to like a metallic smoothness, which just uses a gray channel, right? We looked at making our own metallic maps last semester when we made those office buildings, right? Because we would have the windows be very metallic, the concrete not being metallic, so you just have a gray scale. Whereas in the HD render pipeline, it's not only going to calculate metallic in that single texture, right? It's going to use all of those four channels, red, green, blue, and alpha, each have their own grayscale image, right? And so Unity is like taking a single JPEG, which has four layers, or a PNG in this case, extracting those grayscale layers and then applying those grayscales into properties like the shininess, for example. All we really need is to pick one, right? And then we need to tell it where it's going to go. So I will navigate back to my Unity project. I'm going to go into my character folder and just put it all in the same folder. Go back to Mr. Substance Painter. To put everything in there. And then I can also tell it how big I want this texture to be. With a small character like this, I could go as low as 512 by 512. I'll do 1024. That's kind of bare bones standard for everything, you know, PS2 and later. Of course, the more detailed you need your character or object to be, the higher you want to go over here. 4K textures, though, will slow down your game, right? Because that's a lot of graphics card memory to use up. All right, everything else here is pretty much, can leave it at the standard. So I hit export. It's going to do some calculations. You can check that it exported correctly, right? And you should probably recognize, you know, the naming convention like we started using last year in environment modeling, right? You want to have the name of the texture followed by what that piece of the texture does, whether it's metallic, the normal maps, the color map, etc. So that just helps us plug it back in once we get into Unity. Unity will import those. Now I already have a main character material here. You can always make a new one. And create material. This is my and I'm just going to add the materials that I need, right, from these into their respective slots. So let's pop it onto my character so I can see it happening. Yeah, so that's our color material, height map. We've got a metallic. Ooh, pretty. Got a normal map. Fix that, please. We have a roughness, which I believe it goes under our detail mask here. Now, it is worth checking whether the OpenGL normal map works a little better, which it does. This is just what Unity's rendering prefers. So that's pretty much it. We have got our texture from Substance back into Unity, right? He is looking quite shiny. Maybe my mask map isn't where it needs to go, right? So sometimes you do need to check yourself. Albedo alpha. You're looking rather shiny today, Mr. Guy. Oh, okay, so I can also adjust the smoothness, which is going to determine just how shiny he is. So find something that you like, right? But that is the gist of it. Yeah, so maybe let's try doing a low res version and see if that creates a kind of old school result. So we can do another export textures configuration. Let's dial it way down. Oh gosh, my poor artist eyeballs are going to be crying. To a low res folder and just put it in there. Make sure our configuration goes back. What if, I think we used standard metallic last time. Let's see if standard specular picks up what we need. Okay, did it super quick because of the size of those textures. Make a new material ball. Assign it to our guy. Drag in those maps. Looks like it's just giving us more of a blurry result, not necessarily what you might be looking for, right? And I just grab normal map. But it's certainly a step up from just a plain old texture map. Yeah. So don't be afraid to use this on environment objects as well, right? You could use it on a terrain object if you wanted to make your terrain in Maya, right? You could make you could even just pull out the materials from Substance Painter, toss the textures into Unity, and just like paint them on a terrain, right? Because they're just JPEGs hidden underneath here. So maybe you would just want to make like a flat plane object, texture it, and then export and see what that looks like in Unity. That will give you those flattened JPEGs, right, or PNGs that you need. But yeah, I feel like this program, was a super huge step up for compared to the old way of doing things. And it's got a great interface, very easy to use. Once you understand the masking method, right, of just like drag your material in, mask it using add black mask, and then using either the brush or the polygon fill tool with its different settings, right, to fill different sections of your character. So as you're modeling, you could also think about where your cuts are between UVs, right, to create some of these cool effects like the jeans effect, right, where it's creating the stitching. But overall, yeah, I find this program is a lot more relaxing to use than either Maya, Unity, or even Photoshop these days. It's getting a little stressful to use. So hopefully you guys have fun with it. It is a little bit trickier, right, when you start doing faces and eyeballs and things like that. That takes a little bit more finesse. I've tested eyeballs a few times in here, and I've ended up having to just do it manually. But you can just brush things directly on here. It's just a little bit trickier. I haven't really got into these other brush types, but they work similarly um, to ZBrush, where you can say put like individual buttons down your character's chest or something like that by just kind of like painting normal maps directly onto the texture, right? So if you want to experiment with this stuff, um, you might need to go look for a tutorial on that because I have not jumped into the normal map painting stuff just yet. But it is there, and yeah, what I would recommend those is starting with the smart materials and the materials. Just make sure that when you first bring in the model, to run this bake mesh maps algorithm so that it can pull the ambient occlusion map, right? That's going to be the most important one. So yeah, any other questions in chat, or you want to turn your mic on? I'll open the floor. Otherwise, we can call it there. Cool. Yeah, I mean, I really think you guys will enjoy this. It does make your life a lot easier. It's even easier than painting a flat texture in Photoshop, to be honest. But can be a little bit distracting with all the material options, right? These are a little bit trickier to figure out which slider does what, as you guys saw me flailing slightly there. But oh, the other thing is just to remember layers, right? So if you have multiple things on the same area, you can have things painted in the same area. It's just going to determine, right, like what layer is higher up, which is going to be the one that displays, right? So yeah, go and grab a free license for this. I need to update my license. I only got 5 days. Free license for educators and for students. So that's what we like, right? And yeah, it will greatly improve your workflow for all things game related and art related. So have fun, guys, and don't forget the quiz. It is linked up at the top of the chat. I'll just pop it in again. And also look at the walkthrough from this morning if you need to get animations onto your character in Unity. I did use a very hacky method. I'm sure you programmers will cringe once you see me get to the code, but it will get you started, get you off the ground, right? Which is the important part. Where is it? There it is. Oh, look at that. It is. That's beautiful, beautiful 6 lines of code there. 8 lines of code. All right, guys. So thanks for joining. And oh, it looks like David is popping in. So if you want to hang out, see what David's up to. He will take over the Zoom. Okay. Oh, is that David T or David W who just joined? You just missed it, David. Sorry. You'll have to look at the video. We just wrapped up. We started at 2. Alrighty. So thanks everybody. I'll talk to you later. See ya.